This deal from hell. This deal very quickly turned into the biggest pain in my butt that I've ever experienced, a huge cause of stress, and I even started to get some gray hairs dealing with this. What's going on? Hayden Crabtree here, back with another great video, and this one's gonna be a little bit special. I'm gonna walk you through a real estate project I'm working on. I've been working on for almost 2 years. All right. Started construction. We can see some dirt piles over there they got from excavating holes. And we're gonna have, this is gonna be the last building to go up. We're gonna have a new drive connecting two different concrete pads here because we're gonna have a new building going that way. And so I wanna share with you guys what I'm interested in, what I'm working on right now. Of course, my kind of commercial real estate is not the only kind of commercial real estate. I'm gonna talk about specifically why I'm doing these projects. It doesn't mean you have to do projects like this, although I think they are great projects. Without further ado, let's dive in and talk about what I'm working on. So this project I'm working on, I bought it as it actually had a fully built out 40,000 square feet of canopies, right? So these aren't buildings, these are essentially just roofs. And so I bought this. This project is down in Fort Myers, Florida, down in sunny Southwest Florida, a great market. If you know anything about this market, it is growing so quickly. There's a lot of money moving there, and I personally love Fort Myers. I think all of Florida is a great spot to be investing in real estate right now, but Southwest Florida particularly, I love it. Here's a picture of it whenever I originally bought it. And as you can see here, there's no buildings here. These are just structures, they're just roofs for parking underneath it. And where I got this idea is in the town north of here in Punta Gorda, Florida. I own a boat and RV parking facility, and we're just always full, okay? And what I noticed, right, I'm always trying to get a sense of what my customers want, is we have some covered parking there, which is where you park your boat or your RV underneath a roof, and it keeps your boat or RV out of the Florida sun. Which, if you know anything about the Florida sun, it can get hot, it can be long, it can be all day long. And what it'll do, let's say for instance, you have a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 RV or motorhome, motor coach, whatever you want to call it. If you go out and you buy that and you just leave it sitting in the sun, the value of that from the paint job going down, the inside of it's going to bake, your $400,000 motorhome by sitting out in the sun, you know, is going to go down in value because it's going to deteriorate, it's going to depreciate, and not the good kind of depreciation that we want in real estate. And so by having these canopies that you can park underneath, it protects your vehicle, whether it's that RV or that boat, from deteriorating so fast because it keeps the sun off of it. And what I noticed is that with so many people moving in with the snowbirds, people come down from Canada or all over the US and love to live in their RVs, is that they want those covered RVs. And so my spot had a bunch of uncovered RV units, and I've just been looking. I've been trying to buy other people's facilities. They're all full, and I just said to myself, I'm gonna go out and I'm going to develop a project. And so this was in the fall of 2019, okay? And so what I found is that there was a demand. I had a study done called a feasibility study, which is by a third party. It's kind of like an appraisal, but instead they demand the feasibility, or they study the feasibility, meaning the supply and the demand in a market for a product like this. And essentially, they came back and they said, this would be a great project. This would be a great area for you to build something like this in. So I set out, and like I do anything, I wanted to find an off-market deal. And that's exactly what I did. I found a project that had been bought a couple months earlier for $1.7 million. It's the project I showed you earlier. They had two buildings on it, one 30,000 square foot fully roofed, and another 10,000 square foot building for a total of 40,000 square feet. And running the numbers on it, sure, this could be a good project, but it was 5 acres. And one of the things that was really cool about this 5 acres, it was all already paved, okay? Now, whenever you're building something, whenever you're building real estate, a construction project, there's one thing you need to know about. It's called impervious surfaces. And essentially what that is this means that it's not dirt, right? So buildings could be impervious surfaces, concrete could be impervious surfaces. Sometimes governments will consider gravel impervious surfaces. Some governments do, some governments don't. Well, this government did. But what that really matters is that whenever you add impervious surfaces, you have to tell the government the water, the rain that comes down on that, what are you gonna do with that instead? And that's why on a lot of commercial properties, whether it's in front or behind, you see these ponds, okay? These ponds, essentially, you you have to be able to tell the government, if I build this, if I add this impervious surfaces, then I have to be able to handle the amount of water that comes down on this property. I need it to stay on this property. And that's why we build ponds, so that whenever the rain comes down on the building or on the asphalt, it drains to the pond and it doesn't go to our neighbor's property. Because if it's impervious surface, it can't go in the ground, right? When it rains on a building, it's not going in the ground underneath that building. It kind of flows off around that building and then goes in the ground. And when the ground can't absorb it, then it needs to go into a pond or flow somewhere else. And so the point being is that I really like this project because it was 5 acres, but it was all already impervious surface. So if I wanted to come in and I wanted to add more canopies, what was great is this entire 5 acres was already paved. And so I didn't have to worry about water displacement and running water somewhere else. So I thought this was great. It was a great off-market property. I started running the numbers. I started getting quotes, and it turned out I would be able to buy the land. I'd buy this off-market deal for $1.8 million. I would go and I would build 60,000 additional square feet of these canopies. I would add some electricity. I would do, add a gate. I would fence it. I'd put up a sign. I'd add cameras. I'd do the full works, and everything was going to be about $3.5 million. Now, what was cool is whenever I was running my pro forma for this, is that I thought this project was going to be worth, on a 7.5 cap, about $7 million. Okay, so let's do that quick math real quick. We're going to do the entire project for $3.5 million. We only needed $700,000 for this. Okay, so $3.5 million minus $700,000 is we were going to have, let's see, that's $2.8 million of debt, and we're gonna turn that into $7 million. And so we're gonna turn that $700,000 into over $5 million through this project. Great project, amazing numbers. Those kinds of deals are hard to come by. Don't just think that you can go develop it, because you're gonna learn about this deal from hell, right? This deal very, very quickly turned into the biggest pain in my butt that I've ever experienced, a huge cause of stress, and I even started to get some gray hairs dealing with this. So I lined this deal up. I lined every single thing up in this deal in the fall of 2019. I had some environmental problems on this deal that caused me, I was gonna buy it in 2019, but I had some environmental problems that caused me to have to get a phase 1 and then a phase 2 study, because back in the 60s, this property, this 5 acres, used to be used as a junkyard, and environmentally that's not good. So we had to drill into the ground, pull dirt out, send it to a lab to get tested to make sure there wasn't any really bad, gas substances, oil, or stuff that could potentially be harmful that poses a risk to my bank. If there's bad stuff there, the government wants you to replace it, or as they call remediate. You literally will have to dig down into the soil however far that contamination goes. So if it's 1 foot, you have to take an entire foot of dirt, haul it out to a hazardous wasteland area, and bring new dirt back in. So that was a big risk. So we had to get environmentals done, and essentially we came back and we were clean, which is a huge relief, but I had to get that deal extended. And while I was getting that deal extended for those studies, I told my civil engineers, I said, hey, let's go ahead and submit this thing and start putting in the paperwork so that the government can give us our approval. Now, because there was already impervious surfaces, because there's already 40,000 square feet of canopies, essentially what happened is we applied for what is called a limited development order. If I were doing a brand new project, I would have applied for a development order, but because I was really just doing an expansion to what was already there, it was a limited development order. And essentially what that is it looks at where you're gonna place the buildings, it looks at the traffic that comes in, it looks at the fire safety on that, if the fire trucks can get in and out of there, do you have to put sprinklers in your buildings, things like that. It looks at the use to make sure that the proposed use you're intending for this project lines up with, the zoning requirements, all of that good stuff. The cool thing is that I remember that we got our limited development order approval, meaning, hey, you can do this project, the government signs off on it, before we bought it. We ended up buying it on Valentine's Day of 2020, right? So here's what happens. We buy the property on Valentine's Day of 2020. The week after, we got an email from the government saying, oops, sorry, we accidentally approved your order, and that was an accident. We now revoke approval. And I'm sitting here going, what the heck? You guys you gave me approval. I bought this project with approval in place. and then you just take my approval away? Am I even gonna be allowed to do this project? I didn't just buy this land just for the fun of it, right? Like this land without these canopies, this additional expansion doesn't make any sense for me to buy. That's a really hard place to be in when you have investors, when you have a bank, when you have a lot of people looking at you to deliver a financially good project. I had to hire an attorney, I had to get into the nitty gritty, I incurred a bunch of additional expenses, but in addition to that, something about a month or two later happened called COVID-19. Nobody's working. Supply chains go really bad. Like everything that I felt like could have gone wrong was going wrong. And it took everything within me to not absolutely panic, but just to sit down and say, how are we gonna get through this? Step number one, I had to figure out, would we even be allowed to build on this property? Here's what happened is that the fire district came in and said, hey, we didn't actually inspect this the way we should have. You're either gonna need to add sprinklers to all of your buildings, or you can run fire hydrants all throughout your entire property, okay? Well, here's the thing, sprinklers are $3 a square foot, okay? And so on 60,000 additional square feet, that's $180,000 extra dollars just for sprinklers. That does not increase the value of your property. Remember, when you're an investor, I'm okay to spend more money, but I always wanna make sure I can generate more income. You can't put sprinklers in a canopy and expect for people to pay you more money. It doesn't provide more value. The next thing that we looked at is fire hydrants. In the state of Florida, if you're going to dig trenches to put water lines in, the trenches have to be at least, I think it's 3 feet wide. And so we were looking at running over, I think it was around a quarter mile of trenching through our property. And it was gonna be something like $400,000 in order to put fire hydrants around my property. Again, added no value to the project, was not in the budget. And remember, I set my budget, I raised the capital, I got the debt, all before going off the approval that we had. And so this was really, really bad news. I knew that I had to fight this, so I hired an attorney to really dive into this case and to go talk to the county for me. Fast forward 9-10 months later, the property sat at the end of 2 roads. It had access from 1 road, but it did not have access to another road. There were fire hydrants at the end of both of those roads, and I essentially just got to add a new road, an emergency access road to that fire hydrant on the other street that didn't used to be accessible, and we got the sign off. That was great, but it cost me, I think, $25,000 on legal fees, and it cost me 10 months. So then we're sitting here at the beginning of January in 2021, and we have approval, but now we have to go and we have to submit for building permit. The building permits, which is normally a 6-week process, took us 5 months in order to get our building permits out. And of course, the building permits, you don't want to order your materials until you get your building permits because they might have comments, you might have to change it. And so we took 5 months in order to get our building permits approved. And then at that time period, we had to order our materials, which normally only takes 6 to 8 weeks, but instead these materials took another 6 months. In addition to that, my materials originally were gonna cost me $500,000. The prices were now up to $650,000, which was a $150,000 increase. And here's the thing, I had to spend that money. I had to spend the additional money because if I didn't, then the project wouldn't get done. And I was legally bound for purposes of the loan in order to complete this project. And so again, this was like a project from hell. Oh, let me mention one last thing. That time period, whenever I had to fight the government, I had to make loan payments. I had to make mortgage payments. I started renting uncovered spots to customers. Well, I had some covered spots. Remember, I had 40,000 square feet. I rented all of those out and I started renting uncovered spaces out so that I could cover my mortgage, I could cover my property taxes, I could cover my insurance, and hopefully I could make a little bit of money to help go towards fighting the cost of the legal bills that I had to pay to fight that thing. And that was successful. I got the project up where it was generating money, where it's cash flow positive, not by a lot, not anything like it'll be whenever it's done and finished, but it's a good thing that we did get it rented out and started generating some income. We're finally kicking off here and we're getting this project built, and I have some good news about this project, okay? It sounds like everything that's gone wrong, I've learned a lot. I want to share with you what I've learned. So if you have any questions about any of that, drop me a comment. I'm happy to answer. I don't want anybody else to go through that pain. I've gone through it. If you have any questions, let me help you out. But here's what's good that has happened in that time frame. Since that's happened, property values have gone up and rental rates have gone up tremendously. Particularly for my product in this market, what has happened is the rates whenever I bought it were about 50 cents a square foot is what my original feasibility study said. We got an updated feasibility study just to make sure that I wanted to do this project where I could just sell the land and get out of the project. The rental rates have gone up to 83 cents per square foot on that project. That's per month, okay? So remember, I bought it with 40,000 square feet. It's gonna have 60,000 additional square feet. Let's call that 100,000 square feet. At 50 cents a square foot, that'd be $50,000 a month in rental income. But at 83 cents a square foot, that's $83,000 a month. So yes, my project expenses increase. It's gonna cost me additional money in order to get this project done. But the good thing is now it's also gonna generate a lot more money. And on a cap rate, I'm happy to spend that money because going from $50,000 to $83,000 a month is a big needle mover, especially when you put all that money on a cap rate. In addition, we started generating positive customer reviews. We started letting customers we know we're in the market. We got our website done and we prepared ourselves and moved forward. So this project I've been going at, again, learned a lot of lessons. It's been really, really painful for me. Again, here's what I'm hoping it looks like whenever it's done. And I'll keep you guys updated on this project when I finally get it done. If you ever do real estate investing, specifically if you ever do expansion work, construction work, development work, if you do anything like that, there's a 100% chance you are going to be hit with setbacks, okay? The government's gonna say something, there's gonna be some requirement you didn't think about that you're gonna have to fulfill. One of your contractors isn't gonna show up, you're gonna get a price increase, there's gonna be a pipe in the ground you weren't expecting. Something is going to happen. You have to, one, plan for things to happen. If you think something's gonna take a month and it's gonna cost $10,000, I would budget for 2 months and $15,000. That's just like where your mindset needs to be at. Hardly anybody ever comes in under budget on these kind of projects. You wanna work as hard as you can, but just stuff happens, life happens, right? COVID hits, you gotta wait 2 additional years. Like there's just a lot of things that are gonna happen. If you're gonna do a project like this, be prepared for the unexpected to happen to you and then make the best, try to have a positive mentality about everything and try to look at everything as a lesson, when and where you can learn, and try to find people who have been there and have done that, who can really help you make it through these kind of projects because they're lucrative. You can make a lot of money from them, but they can also be really stressful. They can take a lot of energy out of you. They can take your positivity out of you. You want to make sure that you don't look at setbacks as a reason to say, I'll never do this again, right? You want to use this, I'll never make that mistake again in my next time. So I hope this was helpful. If you guys like this video, hit that thumbs up button. I would really appreciate it. And if you have any questions about this project, development projects in general, drop a comment below and I'll be happy to help out. So be great. See you next time.